Hello, I'm Nelson Liu and welcome to a new year of Western Perspective. Thanks for joining us. This week, he comes across as friendly with a good sense of humour and his own charm, but do they turn Anthony Albanese into a good Prime Minister? The Labor leader has touched down in WA on the first day of quarantine-free travel in the state, but will his presence mean more votes for Labor from Western Australians? I spoke to political commentator Peter Kennedy about the opposition leader and his party's chances in the federal election.
Oh look, Mr Albanese's out to campaign as hard as he can. Hasn't been to Western Australia for quite a long time, so he's making up for lost ground. And there are some key marginal seats in play at the federal election, and he wants to win them.
How do you think his reception is going to be here?
Well, because he hasn't been in Perth for quite a while, I think a lot of people will want to see him. And want to see how he's changed, if he has changed from when he was a minister before, perhaps, and a senior person in opposition. They just want to see how he's performing as opposition leader and a potential Prime Minister. I guess they want a good look at him just to see if he shapes up as a possible Prime Minister, and that could determine how they vote.
So who is Anthony Albanese, at least compared to a former leader like Bill Shorten?
Well, Mr Albanese presents as a sort of a knockabout sort of guy. A Sydney MP who's come up through the ranks, got into Parliament. He served a long time in Parliament. Got in as a very young Member of Parliament. So he's there. He's been a minister, and he's an experienced politician. I guess what voters want to know is whether he's got the goods to lead the country. But he has avoided. Mr Albanese has avoided a couple of things a couple of traps that Mr Shorten fell into. Number one, Mr Shorten had a big bag of policies, some of which were unpopular and helped to be his undoing. And also, he antagonised a lot of people talking about the big end of town. You know, as if business was, there's something wrong with business, and he's sort of the big end of town is something to be feared or looked down on. But, Mr Albanese has been careful to avoid that, so from that point of view, he's campaigned quite shrewdly.
As of a few days ago, his approval rating is practically neck and neck with Scott Morrison with a Labor lead. Does he have the strength to hold up in the upcoming election?
That'll be the challenge. That'll be the challenge for Mr Albanese when Mr Morrison gets onto the campaign trail. Mr Morrison is a proven campaigner. He showed that 3 years ago when he out-campaigned Bill Shorten in the election campaign. The challenge for Mr Morrison is to repeat that this time round. If he can, he could get the Liberal Party back into a position where it's neck and neck. But at the moment, of course, Labor has a very useful lead.
Him being here in WA, how will his relationship with Mark McGowan help his campaign?
I think Mr Albanese will be hoping that some of Mr McGowan's magic will rub off on him. You know, Mr McGowan had an extraordinary win in the state election just 12 months ago. Extraordinary. And Mr Albanese will be hoping that sort of being seen with Mr McGowan and some of that popularity that Mr McGowan built up at the state level will rub off on Labor at the federal level. That's the challenge. It didn't work for Labor 3 years ago, but Labor, and particularly Mr Albanese, will be hoping it'll work this time.
And finally, what does Anthony Albanese have to do to win this election?
Well, look, I think he has to put up a plausible set of policies for Australians to vote for, and that to show he has a vision for the country. Very, very important in very, very uncertain times. So he's got to show that, number one, the policies are right, the vision is right, and that people can trust him to lead the country. And he'd do that better than Mr Morrison. If he can do that, then he could well win the election. And now, here's AMA WA spokesman Dr Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. Australia continues to be a tale of two different countries, really, with the map of the pandemic now that Western Australia is starting to see in the thousands of cases per day, whilst over east they're still getting significant numbers but considering themselves to be a bit beyond it and dropping their restrictions. So we're about to find out over there how much of their protection, their flattening of the curve, if you like, has been due to things like masking, crowd limits, social distancing, and how much of it is due to high booster vaccination levels. Of course, in Western Australia, we started our Omicron wave with a much higher third dose level, fortunately, and therefore we can expect to see pretty fresh immunity helping to protect us here. And we've also been really good in WA at complying with masking and so on. So as those restrictions tighten a bit, we would expect to see the case numbers here not rise as quickly, hopefully not getting to the projected 9,000 or 10,000 cases a day, but stopping short of that. And our Achilles heel remains, of course, the schools. And we're seeing a lot of school transmission, very concerning that a lot of unvaccinated kids are potentially being infected. And I would have sympathy for parents in wanting to be conservative about avoiding those infections if possible until their child's had a chance to be vaccinated, given that we don't know really too much about the long-term consequences of long COVID, which we're seeing as an increasing problem overseas. Certainly the Italians, the Americans reporting that very strongly. These problems with COVID over East amplified now, of course, with the terrible flooding that we're seeing there. And our heart goes out to people who have relatives or who are mixed up in that situation, remembering that always worsens public health situations because it's very difficult for people then to be able to not only avoid catching COVID in the first place, but potentially getting the treatments that they need. Speaking of treatments, we now have approved antivirals for people over the age of 65, and people who have symptoms should certainly be getting tested very quickly. And if you're in that age group, and finding out whether you're eligible to have early intervention treatment, particularly if you have other underlying diseases. There's been some commentary, including from Nobel Prize winner Professor Peter Doherty, that Shane Warne's unfortunate demise has come at a time when he was in the post-COVID phase. And although we have no idea really what his personal circumstance was, there is very solid evidence published in Nature that in the year after having had COVID, we're 10 to 12 times more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke than we would have before that. So if you have other risk factors such as lifestyle things or family history, then that is a risky time. And we need to take that seriously. We don't need to panic about it, as with all of these things, but we do need to be informed and armed with the science so that we can deal with things realistically rather than pretending that they're not happening. So stay safe out there. Masks are still the most important thing that we have. A well-fitted mask, an N95 or P2 mask, they're getting to be widely available in the community now. Wear those whenever you're in the company of others. I'm now wearing clear, very stylish looking goggles when I go out to the supermarket and so on. And it doesn't seem to upset anybody. Also protects from any aerosols getting into the eyes. But most importantly, a well-fitted face mask for yourself and also your children when you're in crowded public places indoors. Very important. Thanks for your time.
And that's WP for this week. We'll be back again next time, but for now, it's back to you, Ivan and Melly.
Thanks, Nelson. And now, here is Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. On 6 News breaking news, Vladimir Putin warns the worst is yet to come amid a noticeable escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war over recent days. Plus, tributes continue to flow in from across Australia and around the world for cricketer legend Shane Warne, dead at the age of 52. And wet weather conditions ease in Queensland, where the state's southeast continues the clean-up. But over in New South Wales, rain is expected in the next few days amid devastation in Lismore. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us, or head to our website 6newsau.com for now. Though, guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We had the latest news on our website, wmnnews.com.au.
From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.